welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 FM. On today's journal, campus librarian John Leonetti shares how faith-informed conversations can gently shape the academic experience, even in secular spaces. Here's part one of a two-part conversation. All right, well, we're here in the WIHS studios today with a gentleman by the name of John Leonetti. John grew up right here in Connecticut in the greater Waterbury area. John is the father of two fantastic adult children and is married to his lovely wife, Tara. He works as a librarian in a secular college setting. We'll come back to that. And also hosts a monthly men's theological discussion group called Theology on Tap. Well, you heard me mention that John's vocation is working as a librarian in a secular setting, which, as you might imagine, has some interesting challenges built into it. I should mention that John is a firm believer in Christ and a good brother in the Lord. Full disclosure, I've known John personally for many years and count him a friend. And John, thank you for joining us today in the WIHS studios.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, sure. Now, all that being said, in introduction, John, you recently had, and congratulations, by the way, you had an article that you wrote in a publication, got published, called The Christian Librarian. That's the name of the publication. And the article is entitled, Shepherding the Reference Interview in a Secular College. We'll have to unpack that a little bit. Mm-hmm. But before we do that, what inspired you to write that article, and was there a particular experience that led you to writing it?
Well, the article is basically a reflection of 20 years of serving the student body and faculty, I might add as well, because they come to us with reference questions. And over the years, I've noticed that the materialist worldview, and we'll define that in a couple of minutes what materialism is, but it has limitations. When people ask you questions that deal with things that go beyond science, and it's hard for the student to ground an answer in reality, and they would ask me questions like, where do rights come from? Why is this evil? What is the ultimate standard? And I can't really preach on company time, and they will ask me questions like, I'm a Christian, who should I vote for? And I'm like, I'm on the clock here. So I have some...
That's got to be so tricky.
It's very tricky navigating it, but I've learned how to practice what's known as verbal aikido, like direct the conversation, kind of like Bugs Bunny hit a golf ball and he directed it to the hole. You could kind of ask leading questions, and if you do that in a good way, sometimes they would want to talk to you off desk time.
Right.
In one particular instance, an atheist invited himself to my men's monthly group because he made an appointment with me, Desire for Knowledge. And I'm like, where are we going to go with that? Because I'll get reference appointments where people will want to sit down with me one-on-one in my office. And he happened to see my Biola. I went to Biola University and got a master's in apologetics. And he said, oh, you said, what is that? And then I told him about the TOT, Theology on a Tap. Could I come? I forgot if you were at that one, Neil.
I don't think I was. I think I missed that one. Now, the title of the article, Shepherding the Reference Interview in a Secular College. What do you even mean by the reference interview?
Oh, it's when people come to the desk and say, hi, I have a question. How can I help you? And, I want to know, where do rights come from? Which was an actual example from a sociology professor. He used to send students to the library, and he happened to know me. Go ask John and my coworker Liz at the time, where do rights come from? And I'll say, we're going to say Darwin's Petri dish and evolution. Right. They evolved over time. So I would get lots of questions like that, the ones that deal with truth, justice, morals, meaning, and beauty. And how do I answer that purely from a scientific setting where science tends to rule, what they call it STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or empiricism? If you can see it, touch it, taste it, smell it, or hear it, it's true. And basically, it's hard to deal with students in those areas when they want answers to what is known as metaphysical questions, things that go beyond the natural realm. And I mentioned materialism earlier, and for our listeners, materialism is the belief that only the physical is what is real and nothing else exists, and nothing there's nothing transcendent out there that's objectively true and valid. There's nothing supernatural. There's no God. It's just zeros and ones, and we're having this conversation because of chemical reactions.
Right. Now, I imagine when you're in a secular college situation, and then not only just secular college, but you're working in the library as a librarian, you are in the very epicenter of liberal and progressive and materialistic thought, I would think. Is that accurate?
Yes, I would call it. The whole curriculum catalog at the college is not entirely bad, but in more in the social sciences class, you see in the Marxification of education, where students are not being taught, they're being indoctrinated. In fact, the student that made an appointment with me said, listen, I'm taught that we're supposed to be fluid on gender and not think black or white, but because I'm an African American, if I go into a sociology class, I'm automatically the oppressed class. They have a black and white mentality there, no pun intended, but yet when it comes to gender, there's fluidity. So it's a contradiction.
Yeah. Interesting. Now, you mentioned that students often, I should say you mentioned in your article that students often wrestle with deeper metaphysical questions during reference interviews. Can you share maybe an example of this happening in your experience?
Yeah, there's quite a few. Besides the question from the sociology professor, where do rights come from? I had another student make an appointment with me, and he sat across from me in my office, and I'll get these appointments in a calendar and an email, and it said, I want to know the origin, what role does religion play in morality? So when he sat across from me in the office, I said, well, which religion are you talking about? Well, okay, Christianity. So he sat there, and he told me he's an atheist later, and he said, do you think that religion is a crutch for people who are afraid to die? And I said, you know what? That's possible. But I said to him, is it also possible that atheism might be a crutch for living a life the way you want to live, like a hedonist?
Yeah.
And now as a professional, I didn't have to ask that question. But as a Christian, I couldn't let that go, and I wanted to leave a pebble in his shoe. I've had other Christians see me and my Biola water bottle that says a master's in apologetics. Hey, I'm just turning 19 years old. I could vote this election. Can you help me work out who to vote for?
Wow.
And they made an appointment with me, and I couldn't tell them who to vote for. I said, here's the two platforms of the parties. Which one matches best what fits your belief system? And they could connect the dots.
Right.
The Holocaust. I had another student who had a leukemia in remission. Why does God allow evil? And so I bought her the book, had my professor at Biola sign it for her. So I've had many, many connections.
So how do you actually balance professional ethics and institutional commitments while still being a witness for Christ in your role?
That's a great question. And it's one where I have to walk a tightrope like the guy does over the Trade Center or Niagara Falls. Basically, you never preach on company time. I've never confronted someone, hey, you're a sinner, you need the gospel of Jesus Christ, because I don't want to proselytize on company time, as my article mentions. I let the conversation play out. Sometimes they see I have a background in that. As I mentioned, my water bottle, and the atheist invited himself to my house. But I noticed that they asked 4 basic questions in 20 years of doing this. Who am I? Why am I here? What's wrong with the world? And how can that which is wrong be made right?
You've been listening to part 1 of a 2-part discussion I had with academic librarian and Christian apologist John Leonetti on his published article, Shepherding the Reference Interview in a Secular College. His insights challenge us to bring grace, discernment, and intentionality into the spaces we serve, even when faith isn't spoken aloud. Join us for part 2 of this conversation on the next WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 FM.